13 years old, I would walk down to the corner of Bradford and 25th, carrying a bag of groceries. In a city ranked third highest in the nation for chronic homelessness, in one of the most diverse regions of the United States. That was South Sacramento, California, where I grew up in an ethnic enclave called Little Saigon. I was approaching the middle of 8th grade by the later months of the COVID-19 pandemic, and every 6 weeks or so, I used whatever spare cash I gathered through small school block bake sales, making cookies for my classmates in my free time, and donations as little as $1 each from a few neighbors and friends to drop off grocery bags at the local pantry. This little practice of grocery deliveries, sometimes 1 bag, sometimes 10, of canned goods and produce at the end of this month-and-a-half cycle will become part of a hyper-local yet consistent routine that I would commit to for the rest of the pandemic and long after. A community member ran an Instagram page that would keep track of filling updates or notify neighbors if a fridge or pantry was running low for that week. In the many moments where I would stop by to give, often came moments where I found something I could take. Masks and spare COVID tests were hard to come by, and so I appreciated it whenever there'd be free masking, cleaning, and hygiene supplies left for whoever needed it, including my own family, when finances and day-to-day errands grew tough. This system of communication and reciprocity was sustained neighbor by neighbor. I knew my community was in need, and I felt like I had to do something about it. What I didn't know yet was that this system had a name: mutual aid. At the most basic level, mutual aid is a community-driven voluntary network where people support each other directly by sharing resources, skills, and care to meet collective needs, operating in solidarity. It distinguishes itself from traditional or institutional aid because it takes care of the gaps, the nuances, and the hurdles felt by local communities in order to access support. And so, in 2020, I founded the Reclamation Project, a grassroots, youth-driven response to systemic racism and resource inequity, starting first in Sacramento, among just 7 other middle and high schoolers. Our neighborhoods experience some of the highest rates of poverty and youth violence. Our public schools grappled with underfunding, and the lack of multilingual civic and health education hit our immigrant and refugee families the hardest. But we knew we could be so much more. I was motivated to reclaim our lived realities. What makes mutual aid special is that it breaks down the invisible barrier that tells us creating change is just for experts, institutions, or people in power to step through the door. You don't necessarily need a platform, a title, money, or even permission from the same institutions and authority who had long told us to stand down and stand apart. What you need is people. Mutual aid reminds us that any person can enter the work as who they are with what they have. And this shifts relationships from transactional and inaccessible to collective care. And that's the very first thing mutual aid excels in, is that it opens access. It shows us that ordinary people already have the power to step in and make change happen. My home near Little Saigon was part of this 2-mile stretch, built by those who sought affordable housing and community following the violence of the Vietnam War. For many families like mine, belonging and security was something we had to build together. It looked like the everyday: running a grocery errand for a neighbor, babysitting for a night if childcare is costly, picking up someone's medicine, sharing leftover food, filling out paperwork, translating documents, and giving rides. We cared for each other and built ecosystems of comfort, trust, and survival when we were left behind in the gaps, swept under the rug as immigrants refugees, and working people. But it wasn't just my home. Mutual aid has been practiced for decades among marginalized groups and ordinary citizens. In the late 1960s, the Black Panther Party, founded in Oakland, California, spearheaded one of the most influential models for modern mutual aid, what they called survival programs pending revolution. The Free Breakfast for Children program, for example, fed over 20,000 children across the United States each day before school, so kids could learn without going hungry. And even in 2025, amidst the government shutdown, communities stepped in to fill the sudden gap in food access in a nationwide wave of mutual aid. In New York City, for example, where nearly 1.8 million residents relied on SNAP, neighborhood programs, just that in the Bronx, saw lines stretching for blocks as hundreds of residents amassed for hot and prepared meals amidst cuts. When traditional safety nets failed, grassroots networks mobilized. During the pandemic, these alternative systems of care became more important than ever. At the Reclamation Project, what used to be a once in 6 weeks grocery drop-off soon grown to incorporate, through the help of ordinary high schoolers, a quarterly get-together at the local library, packing sandwiches and healthy snacks in our county's most impoverished zip code. And soon, we developed a full-fledged community food justice program, mobilizing hundreds of direct volunteers and distributing thousands of meals. And we often fed our neighbors, peoples whose names that we knew. Mutual aid showed us that kids like us could make change happen, getting people involved so they don't feel alone in what they need, but also in what they could offer. Mutual aid gives ordinary people power. It gives power to our friends, our neighbors, our loved ones. It instills in us our own sense of strength, capacity, and voice. But access alone isn't the full story. The second thing mutual aid creates is something deeper: belonging. Mutual aid invites us to come as we are and recognizes that all of us have a stake in our communities. We each can have a part to play. For the majority of the past 6 years, the Reclamation Project was ran 100% by busy high schoolers, now arguably busier high school and college students. Yet we stayed together because we allowed our youth leaders to choose for themselves their tasks that they knew were best suited for them and their needs, that would allow them to thrive. We sustained ourselves because we followed the model of give what you can, ask for what you need, and come as you are. This is an ecosystem diagram of just some of the forms of mutual aid that can take shape. Let me give you a second, and I'll show you where you might fit. Are you passionate about sharing knowledge or education? Do you find joy in social or cultural activities? Or do you just have a basic understanding of technology or healthcare? Are you a chef? Perhaps an artist? Think of these areas as avenues in which you can enter as who you are. And next, I'm going to show you a small list of concrete steps and actions, all real examples of mutual aid in practice. Would you have time to collect and donate your old clothes? Set up a mutual aid Discord or Slack. Lend a Wi-Fi hotspot. Help a student or a peer with their resume or job application. Or cook for a friend or a neighbor, even if it's just once a month. We all live incredibly busy lives between school, work, family, and 24 hours that never stop turning. And yet, mutual aid meets us where we are at and where we choose. It allows us to step inside collective service against the expectation that it is unreachable. What matters is consistency. And that is what belonging in mutual aid truly means. It's not restricted to who has the biggest action or can spend the longest time. Instead, we commit to something long-term and more sustainable because we know the network has our back as well. As scholar Dean Spade puts, mutual aid is essential for survival. It enables the practice coordinating our actions together in the belief that all of us matter. When we believe in our ability to tangibly, feasibly create change, we grow in commitment. And as we begin seeing ourselves this way, something begins to shift. Because mutual aid does more than just create belonging. It reshapes our values, moving us towards a culture of care. Mutual aid allows us to create with community, to practice with trial and error, and find the best solutions without shame. When the Reclamation Project was first developing our community food justice program, another local partner brought up a fundamental flaw in one of our core events. We stationed a produce distribution in an area and for a population that did not have reliable access to kitchens, cutlery, or cookingware. It was intended to serve our unhoused neighbors. And for a community in which countless individuals had already spent years for proper dental care, our options of crunchy lettuce, hard apples, and granola proved inaccessible rather than equitable. But after consulting resident-led mutual aid task forces who were already delivering directly to encampments, the Reclamation Project was able to shift our unhoused neighbor outreach to bring out hot and prepared meals with accessible ingredients, working with others who already knew the landscape. We even took reports on individuals' allergies information so we could implement accommodations from start to finish. And to this day, we've served over 6,000 unhoused and food insecure neighbors across the Sacramento County. Mutual aid allowed a community to band together, to not only ensure accountability, but gave us the space and the guidance to course correct. It was a safe space to recognize mistakes while ensuring the importance of repairing potential harm. Because we invest in resiliency, not short-term exchanges. And that is how we truly grow. By practicing mutual aid, we were able to give grace to one another. We create trust with each other, and we begin healing with one another. As we know, mutual aid is a catalyst for relationship building. Mutual aid is a framework that's been practiced up to this very day. I'm 19 now. I'm a freshman at Stanford University and a first-generation college student. And as much as people try to talk about adjusting or finding one's place in college, at least one thing brings us together: anxiety about our future and the world. According to the Harvard Youth Poll, 43% of young Americans ages 18 to 29 say they are struggling or getting by. And research indicates that over 60% of young adults report high levels of loneliness. That was 1 in 3 by 2025, amidst what social scientists are calling the worst job market since the 2008 crisis. People, especially young people, seem to be carrying a lot, and we often seem to be carrying it alone. But how come? We connect with people every day, right? Through Instagram, TikTok, Slack, LinkedIn. On this very campus, in this very room, probably hundreds of you can say you are technically connected to more than 500 people each. We network like it is fuel for the climb. Can you get me to where I need to get? Can you get me what I need? What actually happens is that we become so reliant on a network that never feels enough. We focus on extracting from and exchanging with each other rather than sustaining each other. But what we truly need is community, one with which to share our grievances, to be vulnerable, to feel out and be curious, and built by people who see you in times that are asking so much of us. We need people with us, including to discuss some of the world's most pressing social problems in a way that gives us a little hope to change it. Mutual aid has taught me that we have the power to change the status quo. Mutual aid reimagines the way we think about human interaction because we aren't buying or selling or shutting out community members on the basis of cost, loss, or value. We move beyond transaction. The power of mutual aid has led the Reclamation Project to mobilize over 270,000 community members across the United States for social justice, including building a coalition of 3,000 youth mentees, participants, and volunteers out at in-person events, our schools, our classrooms, local libraries, public parks, in our neighborhoods. And I welcome you all to see yourself as part of the movement in the making, because together we are building a revolution of care. I ask you all today to find your people, and perhaps that starts with your very first act of mutual aid. And as we do so, wanting more for society and to solve our world's most pending, largest issues becomes more than a mere lonely and a tangible thought. We know that there's a way out of a crisis because when we look around at the people next to us, we know that is the will. And as we tackle this together, I ask you all to remember, give what you can. Ask for what you need. And come as who you are. Thank you very much.